We now have a new challenge, perhaps the most monumental in recorded history. The opportunity to investigate a phenomenon that could change our destiny. A look at ourselves 1,000 years in the future.
We're going to examine and perhaps question some widely held theories of what may have happened to this Earth of ours. We're going to investigate some strange and bizarre events in the present, unbelievable happenings as fresh as today's headlines. And more important, perhaps, we're going to take a searching and scientific look into the future. We're reaching more and more out into space. Perhaps, as we may learn, someone, something, somewhere in space is reaching out to us.
Who the visitors are, where they're from, and what they want is unknown.
Bigfoot was attracting national attention and was now rapidly becoming the most intriguing mystery on the North American continent. Scientists and photography experts have examined the individual frames of this film and have come to the conclusion that the film and the creature are authentic.
Telepathy, psychokinesis, Bigfoot and black masses, UFOs and Atlantis, Kirlian photography, cloning, and cryonics. These subjects all have one thing indisputably in common. People want to know more about them. For mankind's future, on Earth and beyond.
Welcome to After Dark Radio with your host, Bryan Alvarez.
How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on After Dark Radio. It is February 5, 2017. After Dark Radio here on the Dark Matter Digital Network. Every Sunday night, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. Hey, it's Super Bowl Sunday here. Game's over, but it's time for After Dark Radio. We have been journeying through the 50 states of the Union, all of the monsters, the mysteries, UFOs, the whole 9 yards from all 50 states, and last week we tackled Kansas, and there wasn't a lot going on in Kansas. In fact, as we talked about Kansas, one of the first stories I read was about how there were more Bigfoot sightings in Missouri than Kansas. That was an article about Kansas Bigfoot. The whole article was about how there were more in Missouri. Well, hey, today is Missouri. We'll be talking about the Bigfoot sightings in Missouri, UFO alleged crashes from the 1800s, ghosts, the whole 9 yards. As noted, we are here every Sunday night, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. Normally, we do a double feature with Carl Stern's Dragon King Dark. Airs immediately following this show. Both shows, by the way, available for download at WrestlingObserver.com that houses nearly our full archive. If you want all of the shows we've done dating back to 2011, I believe, I would say 90% are available at WrestlingObserver.com. They go from this recording studio to the website to the airwaves on the Dark Matter Digital Network. So if you missed a show or you just want the archives always available to you of both After Dark Radio and Dragon King Dark, then WrestlingObserver.com is the place to go. And of course, if you are a fan of pro wrestling, mixed martial arts is an even better deal, as you also get full access to all of those shows. That's the main gig, obviously, behind WrestlingObserver.com. Pro wrestling and mixed martial arts coverage, so head up there and check it out. If you do not want to sign up, there's a lot of free things available for you as well. My Twitter is at Bryan Alvarez if you want to communicate with me there. Also, you can send emails to Bryan at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. And the Facebook page, Facebook.com/AfterDarkRadioShow. Andrew Ludsky is our Facebook webmaster, and he puts a lot of great stuff up there. 3 articles a day on average. If you're a fan of the genre, it is a great page to follow to not be bombarded, but also be kept up to date with whatever everybody's talking about in the world of the paranormal. That is After Dark Radio Show on Facebook. So head up there and check that out. And that is all the plugs. When we come back, it will be time for Missouri, monsters, mysteries, aliens, UFOs, the whole 9 yards here on After Dark Radio on the Dark Matter Digital Network. Momo is the name of a local legend similar to the Bigfoot, which is reported to live in Missouri. This from Wikipedia.org, and we have many other sources as well. When I was a kid, I used to read all of the Bigfoot books at the library. I'd go to the library, anything that was available on Mysteries of the Unexplained, which actually was a Time Life series. There was a title of that same name, a series of books that I still have all of them here at this house. But back then, if there was a Bigfoot story, it was in all of the various books about Bigfoot. Momo, I remember vividly from my childhood. Momo, the Missouri Monster, M-O-M-O. Name Momo is short for Missouri Monster. It is reported to have a large pumpkin-shaped head, furry body, and hair covering the eyes. First reported in 1971 near Louisiana, Missouri. Near Louisiana, Missouri. That's the name of a city in Missouri. By Joanne Mills and Mary Ryan. Momo was first reported up and down the Mississippi River, with later sightings documented further west by travel of waterways. If you ever watch Finding Bigfoot, they're always looking for waterways, with the assumption that if there is something out there, likely it will travel along the waterways. It is supposedly a large, tall, hairy, black, man-like creature that emits a terrible odor. Some suggest it was a rogue American Indian. Following sightings in 1972, beginning at 3:30 p.m. July 11, first reported by Terry Wiley and Doris Harrison, and lasting for about 2 weeks, tracks were found and submitted to Lawrence Curtis, director of the Oklahoma City Zoo and Botanical Garden. He deemed the tracks to be that of an unknown primate species. Imagine that. He didn't just say, I don't know what they are. He said these are likely an unknown primate species. He gave credibility to these reports by saying such a thing. We had sightings from 1971 through August of 1972. Pack of picnickers reported that Momo came out of the surrounding woods. We had the famous sighting with Terry Harrison, Wally Harrison, and Doris Harrison, who all, by the way, were very young. Terry and Wally were 8 and 5. Doris was 15. They claimed to see a tall, hairy creature holding a bloody dead dog next to a tree in their yard. And granted, whenever little kids tell stories like this, there's always a degree of skepticism. And it is possible that 3 kids made up a story, or they had a misidentification. And from that point forward, it was a case of mass hysteria over the next 2 months or so. Because really, aside from the one sighting in 1971, everything took place between July and August of 1972. Now, the second sighting, this was 3 days later. All of the individuals, all of the witnesses were adults. One of them was a police officer who heard growls and screams, and they found unidentifiable hair fibers. There was another sighting a week later. Several witnesses near Marzolf Hill smelled the stench of the creature, described as rotting flesh and foul, stagnant water. July 21st, the creature seen again. River Road by Ellis Minor. Creature was 20 feet away when Minor shined a flashlight across it. He described it as having dark black hair down to its chest. No eyes could be seen. Creature whirled around, walked away. July 22nd, plaster casts were made. Black hair gathered, sent to zoologist Ivan Sanderson, who also was a cryptozoologist. Did a lot of work. The great Ivan T. Sanderson. You can Google him. You can check out his books on Amazon.com. And 1972, August 3rd, the final major sighting. Betty and Bill Siddharth heard a high-pitched howl from the front yard of their house located northwest of town. Tracks were seen in the rain-soaked earth. Plaster cast taken. Tracks appeared abruptly in the center of the garden, ended without going anywhere, and they were displayed at Penrod's Auto Parts store at 5th and Georgia Streets in Louisiana, Missouri. A lot of this recorded and told by Lauren Coleman. Writes about it in Mysterious America, which is a great book, as well as Bigfoot, the true story of apes in America, if you want to head over there and check those out. And Lauren is encountering or dealing with health problems and medical bills. So if you want to Google him, there's also a GoFundMe if you want to aid him in any way. Bigfoot Chronicles, SasquatchChronicles.com, Bigfoot in the Ozarks. Missouri has a long history of Bigfoot activity, says this Bigfoot researcher. News reports date all the way back to the 1800s. Kansas City Star, the New York Times have reports about the wild man of the Ozarks. Dozens of people across the Ozarks every year claim they see the ape-like creature, And the reports may not be from the people that you would think. These are police officers, college professors, scientists, doctors, and lawyers, said Ron Bowles. Sasquatch are a persistent memory that have been in records and sightings and drawings for thousands of years, said Cliff Barackman of Finding Bigfoot. I think the idea of a real monster that is so similar to us walking around really grabs our attention, Cliff says. Talks about for the past 50 years, to this day, people happen upon and photograph and cast footprints of Bigfoot. Dr. Kevin Jansen, a professor of biology, says Bigfoot is most likely something much less mysterious. He believes black bears may be responsible for many of these sightings. A 6-foot-tall black bear could easily be seen as a 9-foot-tall thing in the woods. And so, yes, I think a black bear could be mistaken for something different. For over 400 years, this has been in the accounts of the early settlers of North America, the original Native Americans. The notion of us never having had a direct encounter with a Bigfoot is odd. Basically, he's saying, if people have been talking about this for 400 years, we've had 400 years worth of sightings and stories, and yet we still do not have a body or any definitive evidence that the scientific community would accept in naming a new creature, a new species. He thinks, therefore, that makes it highly unlikely that there is a Bigfoot out there. Bigfoot 101, Bowles says, where there is food, where there is good, clean running water, where there is terrain where they can get around and easily conceal themselves, there is a possibility of Bigfoot activity. There's so much land in Missouri, so much food, these things have a lot of room to play. The presence of a possible Bigfoot population is just difficult to accept by a scientist because the population size that would be required to maintain a mating system, and if it's a primate-related organism, you would assume there would be some social system necessary. So, a lot of skepticism, but also a lot of sightings in Missouri. Here's another one, cryptozoologynews.com. A man claims, and this is from 2014, that he saw an unknown creature last April peeking through a window outside his bedroom. The eyewitness, who did not provide a name, says it was 3:35 a.m. when the event allegedly happened. I heard something moving around outside my room, looked outside my room window, which is 9 feet 2 inches tall, and saw glowing red eyes. The next morning, the man said he saw a track a foot and a half. This is a very poorly written. Oh, I see. A foot and a half long, facing 90 degrees away from the house with 5 toes. He claims there was a 15-inch track about 30 yards away. So whatever this was, he claims, weighed 700 pounds based on the depth of the track. It was a foot and a half long, and it was 9 feet tall. That is his claim. No photographic evidence of the tracks was provided. Claimed the creature had a head the size of a watermelon. Animal stood there for 30 seconds before running off. The man explained that he felt the creature was curious about his family. According to the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, other sightings have been reported in the area. In 1980, a group of people using ATVs reported seeing a beast near the town of Hermitite. In 1999, a man looking for mushrooms near Festus had a close encounter with a creature that swung arms back and forth as it walked like a ape. Not an ape, a ape. 2009, a person was reportedly driving back home after a family event, saw a 7 to 8 foot tall ape-like animal running on its hind legs, charging at his vehicle in an aggressive way next to the town of Catawissa. By the way, if we presume that maybe there is something out there, there have been reports for 400 years, and yes, we have never captured one, we've never found a body, but hey, they're out there somewhere. I would think that they would be pretty shy. The idea that one of these creatures would aggressively charge a vehicle, I have to say that I find that a little hard to believe. But that's what the guy claimed, 2009. These are not the only monsters that are reported in Missouri. And in fact, one of them, I'd bet that 99% of you have never heard of. Space penguins. Farmer Claude Edwards said the mushroom was out of place. It was also green, metal, and enormous. He found the metallic mushroom in a field on St. Valentine's Day, 1967, and went to investigate. At the base of the structure, this, by the way, a large mushroom, enormous. At the base were a number of creatures, about 3 feet tall, that resembled green waddling penguins with large black eyes. Acting like an irrational evolved human, he armed himself with rocks and heaved the Stone Age tools towards the ship. So he came across a UFO shaped like a giant mushroom. There are creatures surrounding it that look like giant, I guess that's not too big, but 3 feet tall, green, waddling penguins. He responds by grabbing rocks and throwing them at the craft and the penguins. The rocks, however, ran into a force field about 15 feet from the craft that kept him away from the penguins. The whole thing took over 5 minutes, maybe 10. He told the press after his encounter with the mushroom. I have never seen anything like it. It looked like shiny silk or something, couldn't tell. I was going to tell, though, if I could have hit it with that rock. Apparently agitated by Edwards' aggressive behavior, the penguins floated into their mushroom and took off into the sky. I guess the question would be, what did they need a flying mushroom for if they could float? But that's the story. Also have the Missouri Monster and the Serpent of Mud Lake. This here sounds like your typical late 1800s story made up to sell newspapers. Newspapers in the 1800s and notes were rife with fanciful stories of giants and monsters, such as this creature story from the September 19, 1895 edition of the Hawarden Independent, describing a monster in a lake near St. Joseph. The serpent in Mud Lake, south of the city, has been seen again, it says, this time by Anderson McCoy, a brother of policeman McCoy. Serpent has been seen a number of times during the past summer, several times. It has been caught in nets by fishermen, but broke through the nets, leaving a hole large enough for a horse to pass through. The fishermen have never been able to land it. McCoy has a strong boat, which he uses to hunt ducks on the lake in the season when they are plentiful there. He was out in the boat a few days ago when something struck it, and he declares it was knocked 10 feet into the air. When the boat came down again, McCoy saw the serpent swirling in the water a short distance away. He could not see its size or shape, but saw enough of it to know that it is of a huge size. His brother's boats have been struck a number of times. No injury resulted. The fishermen of the lake are considerably excited about the presence of such a mysterious object in the water. McCoy thinks it is a large fish that got into the lake from the river when the water was high. There's also the Piazza. Have you heard of the Piazza? According to the book Hidden Animals, a field guide to bat squatch, chupacabra, and other elusive creatures by Michael Newton, in 1857, red flags, passengers on a steamboat traveling up the Missouri saw a great undulating serpent in the sky that breathed fire. That sounds like a dragon. Other accounts of dragons stretch back to American Indian folklore, including the Piazza bird, described in 1863 by Professor John Russell of Shirtleff College in Upper Alton, Illinois. According to his work, The Tradition of the Piazza, the monster began to attack local Indians after feasting off the spoils of war had given it a taste for human flesh. The dragon was later slain by an Indian warrior. Piazza described as a winged creature, green scales, horns, and a long tail that is said to either live in the rocky crags above the Mississippi River Valley or in a whirlpool in the river itself. And finally, giants. stories of gigantic human skeletons crop up all across North America. One such story from Missouri. New York Times, of all places, published this story, talking about the discovery in a coal mine underneath a city of Moberly of an ancient, enormous city. What thrilled the explorers was the size of the city's former inhabitants. They found the bones of a leg. Femur measured 4.5 feet, the tibia 4 feet 3 inches, showing the creatures when alive must have been endowed with both muscular power and quick action. Skeleton about 3 times as large as that of an average man, 15 to 18 feet tall. But they were afraid to attempt its removal in the morning with the poor appliances at hand. So, of course, they never brought back these Missouri giants or any evidence of them, but they claimed that they existed. Back in just a moment with UFOs, After Dark Radio, Dark Matter, Digital Network. Back here on the show, UFO crash and retrieval in Missouri, 1941, UFOevidence.org, an organization devoted to UFO evidence. One of the most mysterious stories of a crashed UFO with alien bodies preceded the well-known Roswell events by some 6 years. Reverend William Huffman was summoned to pray over alien crash victims outside of Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the spring of 1941. He was shown 3 victims, not human as expected, but small alien bodies with large eyes, hardly a mouth or ears, and hairless. This was a member of the clergy, a reverend. This from an interview with Charlotte Mann, his granddaughter. She claimed that he was called in 1941 to pray over the bodies of alien crash victims. She recounts the experience as told by her grandmother before her grandmother's death in 1984. This is what allegedly happened. This from the UFO casebook, B.J. Booth. One of the most mysterious stories of a crashed UFO with alien bodies preceded Roswell by 6 years. The case was first brought to investigators by Leo Stringfield in his book UFO Crash Retrievals, The Inner Sanctum. Details of the case were sent to him in a letter from Charlotte Mann, who related her minister grandfather's deathbed confession of being summoned to pray over alien bodies outside of Cape Girardeau in the spring of 1941. He had been an evangelist for many years, but had taken the resident minister reins of the Red Star Baptist Church in early 1941. Church records corroborate his employment there during the period in question. After receiving his call to duty, he was immediately driven the 10 to 15 mile journey to some woods outside of town. Upon arriving at the scene of the crash, he saw policemen, fire department personnel, FBI agents, and photographers already mulling through the wreckage. He was soon asked to pray over 3 dead bodies. As he began to take in the activity around the area, his curiosity was first struck by the sight of the craft itself. He was expecting a small plane, but instead, it was disc-shaped. He saw hieroglyphic-like symbols which were indecipherable to him. He was then shown the 3 victims, 3 small alien bodies with large eyes, no mouth or ears, and hairless. Immediately after performing his duties, he was sworn to secrecy by military personnel who had taken charge of the crash area. He witnessed these warnings being given to others at the scene as well. He returned in a state of mild shock, but could not keep the story from his wife, Floy, and his sons. As she lay, his wife, Charlotte Mann's grandmother, dying of cancer while undergoing radiation therapy, she told Charlotte the story over the span of several days. And although Charlotte had heard bits and pieces of the story before, she now demanded the full details. As her grandmother tolerated her last few days on this earth, Charlotte knew it was now or never to find out everything she could before this intriguing story was lost with the death of her grandmother. She also learned that one of the members of her grandfather's congregation, thought to be Garland D. Frauenbarger, had given him a photograph taken on the night of the crash. The picture was of one of the dead aliens being held up by two men. So where's that photograph? That photograph would allegedly exist. Got to be around here somewhere. This would be a good topic to search on the internet. Should add, by the way, that one interesting aspect of this story is that if this is true, that means that there was a crashed UFO and the government showed up, maybe thinking it was a plane crash. They find out it's not a plane crash. It is a UFO. It is a craft from another planet, universe, dimension, God only knows. There are dead bodies there. And their first thought is, we must get a priest. Now, a quick Google search here for Garland D. Frauenbarger alien photo comes up with a million results that all tell the exact same story. All from the exact same source. So, that is a detail that I don't believe should have been left so open-ended. Where's the photo? Does the photo allegedly exist? Who would have the photo? It would seem to be a pretty solid bit of evidence that that story is true, but right now we only really have the one source and the same story published 1,000 different places, all using the exact same verbiage, so likely we will never hear the end of that story. Historic UFOs. Here's another alien spacecraft crashing in Missouri, this time in 1865. Anything prior to the mid-40s, actually anything at any time, you have to take with a grain of salt, but particularly the mid-1800s. Mr. James Lumley, an old Rocky Mountain trapper, this from rents.com, who has been stopping at the Everett House for several days. This is, by the way, the text of a newspaper article from October 19, 1865. The Civil War had just ended. Mr. Lumley states that about the middle of last September, he was engaged in trapping in the mountains about 75 or 100 miles above the Great Falls of the Upper Missouri, and in the neighborhood of what is known as Cadott Pass. Just after sunset one evening, he beheld a bright, luminous body in the heavens, which moved with great rapidity in an easterly direction. It was plainly visible for at least 5 seconds, when it suddenly separated into two particles resembling, as Mr. Lumley describes it, the bursting of a skyrocket in the air. A few minutes later, he heard a heavy explosion, which jarred the earth very perceptibly, and this was shortly after followed by a rushing sound like a tornado sweeping through the forest. A strong wind sprang up at about the same time, but suddenly subsided. The air was also filled with a peculiar odor of a sulfurous character. Should note, by the way, that over the years, whenever people tell stories about alleged meetings with the devil, you always hear about the sulfurous smell that accompanies the devil. But that sulfurous smell is also experienced by people reporting many, many different phenomenon. UFOs, I have heard of the sulfurous smell. Aliens, Bigfoot. The sulfurous smell seems to be associated with paranormal activity and not just the devil, as has been popularly attributed. These incidents would have made a slight impression, it says here, on the mind of Mr. Lumley, but for the fact that on the ensuing day he discovered, at the distance of about 2 miles from his camping place, that as far as he could see in either direction, a path had been cut through the forest, several rods wide, giant trees uprooted or broken off near the ground, the tops of hills shaved off, and the earth plowed up in many places. Great and widespread havoc was everywhere visible. Following up this track of desolation, he soon ascertained the cause of it in the shape of an immense stone driven into the side of a mountain. An examination of this stone, or so much of it as was visible, showed that it was divided into compartments that in various places was carved with curious hieroglyphics. Now, one could have said, hey, maybe this was a meteor. Maybe this was something entering our atmosphere of a perfectly explainable origin. But no, this was covered with hieroglyphics. There were so many stories. Obviously, it's just stories of Egypt had enlightened the imagination or whatever, but man, 1800s, all about hieroglyphics. Everywhere there were hieroglyphics in these strange sightings. More than this, Mr. Lumley also discovered fragments of a substance resembling glass, here and there dark stains as though caused by a liquid. He is confident that the hieroglyphics are the work of human hands, and the stone itself must have been used for some purpose by animated beings. Now, it is possible that this was a meteor that wiped out an area of the forest or whatever, smashed into the side of the mountain, and what he described as hieroglyphics were actually just a misidentification of natural cracks or fragments or whatever in the meteorite. So there you go. Possible that one of these stories from the late 1800s actually is somewhat true, or perhaps at least a memory of an actual event, even if the event was not a crashed alien spacecraft. Back in a moment, the Shadowlands Haunted Places Index. Do you live in Missouri? If so, I'm going to tell you about some of the most haunted places in the state. After Dark Radio, here on the Dark Matter Digital Network. Back here on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio, Dark Matter Digital Network, every Sunday night, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern, here on Dark Matter, the Shadowlands Haunted Places Index. Any places listed here in the haunted places requires permission to visit or investigate. Many of the places are patrolled by the authorities, and trespassers will be prosecuted. You can find more on the shadowlands.net. Any state in the union you can find if you don't want to wait. If you want to read about your state, go to the shadowlands.net. All of these written, by the way, by readers, and so sometimes I struggle with some of these sentences, but I will do my best. Agency Cemetery, haunted by many ghosts. One in particular is a child named Mary. She is blamed for unlatching the gate and leaving it open. Alton in Sugar Shack Road. About 100 years ago on this road, there was a woman that lived there by herself for many years. They accused her and 2 others of using witchcraft, so they hung them with chains, and on every Halloween around midnight, you can drive down the road and hear the chains dragging on the top of your vehicle when you go under the tree. Aurora at the nursing home. An elder man and woman who never seem to converse have been seen from the hallways just as they enter rooms, but never located. The kitchen area has poltergeist activity, heavy coffee container thrown to the floor when no one was near it. Stove burners turn on by themselves. Most chilling was when a small juice glass, the old green type that used to come in oatmeal boxes, appeared in midair, hovered, and then crashed to the floor. The shards were real, but no such glasses were in the kitchen. These events have been witnessed by more than one person at a time and never explained. Which brings up a question, by the way. So they're claiming that this nursing home is haunted. And they're claiming that every now and then these stove burners turn on by themselves. As everybody is well aware, you don't want to leave your stove burners on and then leave, because you could burn the house down. Wonder if anyone has ever attempted to, I don't know how you would. It would pretty much be impossible, because once the house is burned down, I mean, there's no way of knowing what happened, but I wonder if there are mysterious stories of houses and buildings burning down that maybe had paranormal activity. I mean, would it stand to reason that if there are ghosts that turn on stove burners, that at some point houses must have burned down because of this activity? I wonder if anyone's ever examined any of that. Fort Bell in Bellefontaine. The fort hauntings have raised many questions over the years. People have claimed to see, hear, and feel things constantly. The most eerie of all the hauntings, though, is at the staircase. The staircase is an old WPA project consisting of about 5 tiers. Most pictures taken of the staircase reveal a dark red smoke near the first or second stairs when you shoot from the ground up. This experiment was done many times by many different cameras, and always this red light shows up in many different places near the first or second tier of steps. Not sometimes, always. So if you go to Fort Bell and you've got a camera, this is basically guaranteeing that you will photograph some very strange activity. Bellevue School. In the 1980s, a child that was in kindergarten fell off the swing set and was killed. It is said that on a day when the wind is calm, the swing will swing by itself. Also, the playful child runs the halls as you can hear him at night. Benton, at the Bethel Campground Cemetery. At night, you can hear voices coming from the cemetery and blue lights floating through it. There's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something to the blue lights. There are way too many encounters with mysterious blue lights and floating lights and such. Some would say, well, it's ball lightning or whatever, but it happens so often that I presume there must be some sort of atmospheric explanation for what these mysterious blue lights are, because they're seen all over the place in this country. Blue Springs Lob Cemetery. Feeling of being watched, a little boy scene, orbs of light appearing in pictures that weren't there when visited. At Max Cafe. This is a horrific scene of a stepfather who was kicked out of his home for being abusive. They lived in one of 2 apartments above the bar restaurant. The man returned one night with a shotgun, shot out the apartment's windows, and through the security door leading to the apartments. When he entered the apartment, his stepson was ready for him and returned fire with his own gun at point-blank range, shooting him in the neck and nearly decapitating him. The man, quote, visits his old bedroom and roams the building late at night, quote, watching people. A particular 3-year-old begged his mom to tell, quote, that man to stop bothering him at night. The patrons of the bar reported weird noises from the apartment upstairs, odd occurrences in the lower level. Weeks after the incident, a pencil-drawn pentagram with his mother's face drawn into it was found on the backside of the stepson's bedroom door. The mother was not harmed. It is said that the dead man appears in full spectral appearance and has been mistaken for a live person. Incident occurred around 1986 or 1987. The bar may now be closed. It is a large white building on the corner at the end of town on the right. The old bank building is on the left. Blue Springs at the Lob Cemetery. The feeling of being watched, a little boy seen, orbs of light. There they are again, appearing in pictures that weren't there when visited. Boonville, Kemper Military School and College. Old bridge leading to the golf course. Apparition of a female cadet has been spotted. Branson, Dewey Bald Mountain. In the mid-90s, a plane crashed on the north face of the mountain. People have seen hitchhikers near the site of the crash, asking for rides to the airport where the plane was scheduled to land. Branson, Music City Center. Many ghosts haunt this business, including a little girl employee named Amy who likes to simply play. Another old male apparition has been blamed for elevators shutting down and electrical items going bad. Shiners Cemetery in Bramer. This is a small cemetery located outside of town. It only contains about 30 or less graves. It is said that if you see a blue light moving in the cemetery, you will have a terrible accident soon after. Several people have reported this to be true. There are those blue lights again. Thunder Mountain State Park. Chanting and singing from the Osage Indians who frequented this area hundreds of years ago can be heard, along with drum beats and the occasional appearance of Native American apparitions. Campbell. A young boy mysteriously hangs from a tree only on a full moon. Cape Girardeau at Pike Lodge. The Pi Kappa Alpha Lodge just south of Cape Girardeau has its own little ghost. For this old schoolhouse, now a fraternity social palace, there is a resident that doesn't want to go away. Myth is that in the early 1900s, a little girl was accidentally killed in the school. Not much has happened there while large groups have been present, but when it is just a few people, well, it is a different story. Windows shaking, doors slamming, lights swaying, the figure of a little girl jumping rope in the old building late at night by the neighboring residents, and sinister laughing in the furnace room. February 2005 update, the girl's name that died is Jessica. Till recently it was true that she only shows up to individuals or small groups. She made her presence known at one of our biggest and most recent lodge parties. In the middle of the party, she made all the lights go out and the music turn off. All the equipment was running from the sound, or for the sound, but nothing came out of the speakers. There were no technical problems. That sounds like a giant technical problem. So they decided to just wait it out, and eventually, they came back on. Charleston, Upper Big Lake, the ghost of an experienced fisherman haunts the lake because he was drowned there by the ghost of his own nephew whom he had killed with a shotgun accidentally. Christian, Breakneck Hill. I went and hang around at a place called Breakneck Hill. On this steep dirt road near the Christian County, Stone County line, a headless horseman can be seen riding a specter horse. Sometimes the sound of a horse's hooves can be heard. More than one rider has been killed on that hill over the years. Clayton at the Shady Oak Theater. As the story goes, a man killed himself on the grounds before the theater was built. Film has been seen unwinding while sitting on the shelf. The lobby speaker was shot off its hook, only to be found 15 feet away in the middle of the floor. People cleaning after hours have felt a weird, uneasy feeling of being watched from the curtains at either side of the stage. Balcony lights have been dimmed, only to slowly gain light again. Posters in the lobby have been found off their hooks or turned around when the theater opens in the morning. Cold spots have been felt, and even someone saying, "Tisk, tisk, tisk," sneering, and even faint moaning from behind the curtains that lead to the back when no one is around. Not a place you want to be alone in after it closes. Clinton at the old grain mill. For many years, people have heard strange noises coming from the building at night. The noises sound like someone is whispering. Some nights, lights are seen moving from one window to another. Columbia, St. Stephen's College, Searcy Hall. A student gave birth to a child and then for unknown reasons left it in a locker to die. Students have heard what sounds like a baby crying at night. In Senior Hall, same college, a young lady watched her Confederate soldier lover that she was hiding to be discovered and killed. She hung herself in the bell tower of her dorm, haunts it today, searching for her lost love. Allegedly, this is the story of Sarah, the ghost who mourns for her Civil War deserter lover who was hanged. The bell tower was supposedly where she supposedly hung herself. Wasn't even in existence at the time of her death. It was built later. She actually hung herself from one of the rafters of the building. That is a correction, they claim. Same college, Tower Hall. People have reported seeing themselves doing homework. Students were reported seeing themselves doing homework and chatting in the halls. What does that even mean? They saw themselves? I'm totally baffled. Hey, there is an update, though, with additional information. Probably the most violent haunted location on campus. 5th floor is closed due to a fire that occurred there. The elevators and stairs are locked, but one day, just to see if the elevator would indeed not work, some students tried to take it up to the 5th floor. It worked. Once inside, they began asking questions with their tape recorder going. They got a chill and an eerie feeling. They immediately ran out, later played the tape, only to discover there were at least 2 ghosts up there. One was a very friendly gentleman's voice, the other a very rude and violent girl's voice that named herself Stacy. Since then, the elevators have not worked. They have tried again and again, but if you live on the 4th floor, you can hear the furniture moving, among other noises, which can't be explained. Though the fire did not kill anyone, there was a suicide that occurred some 20 years ago by a girl who had been raped on the 5th floor. She threw herself off the roof, landed at the stairs. As for the man's voice, it is not known where he comes from. That's a very, very, very haunted college. Hey, if you live in Crystal City, the Kmart. Over the years, many things have happened in the parking lot at Kmart. People have been shot, robbed, kidnapped, even murdered. Don't go to that Kmart, it sounds like. The employees have to walk to the far end of the parking lot after leaving the closed store and say that weird and unusual events have occurred. They say they hear gunshots, a screaming girl, and that they see headlights shining on their car. Generally, this happens late at night. Kmart suggests that the workers there have a walking buddy to go out to their car. One more here, and man, we could go for years because there is a lot of haunted stuff in Missouri. The Cuba Middle School gym, a ghost supposedly by the name of Joe Belsley haunts our school. He was a very loyal janitor. He fell off a ladder, and now people say, if you call his name 3 times, he will appear. Back in a moment, where you can actually go to find haunted locations and not worry about being prosecuted in Missouri. After Dark Radio, Dark Matter, Digital Network. OnlyInYourState.com, 23 haunted places in Missouri that will send chills down your spine. OnlyInYourState.com. You can find every state there, so might be a fun place to go check out. The Epperson House, built around 1920, now part of the University of Missouri-Kansas. This house, originally owned by Uriah Epperson, has a long history of hauntings. The resident ghosts are those of Uriah's adopted daughter and Uriah himself. Daughter died in the home while the organ was being constructed in the house. She appears in an evening gown, accompanied by organ music late at night. In addition, a man's arm in a blue suit has been seen turning off a light. It was featured, the Epperson House, on TV's Unsolved Mysteries as one of the top 5 U.S. haunted houses. Top 5 in the whole country. The Ravenswood Estate, near Bunston. It was the grand home of a wealthy couple, Nadine and Charles Leonard. The home hosted many parties and was the place to be. Nadine died in a bedroom at age 90. Her body was taken out of the home for funeral preparation. A servant attempting to retrieve clothing for the burial found the bedroom door locked from the inside. They looked in the room by climbing a ladder and looking in the window. No one was there. They tried to get the door open to no avail. Finally, a servant left to get tools to force the door open. But of course, when he returned, the door was already open. Vale Mansion. All these places look very haunted. Besides former owners, Mrs. Vale appearing in the window or around the property grounds, it is also believed that the home's former use as an asylum left negative energies and residual hauntings. The Fear or Screaming House in Union. I believe that I have had Stephen LaChance on the show. I'm 95% positive. I've done so many interviews I can't even remember, but the truly horrifying account of one man's experience with this house was written by former tenant Stephen LaChance. I'm positive I had him on the show. They were amazed at how the low rent and puzzled by the latches on the outside of all the doors. What started as small things, such as a painting that kept falling off the wall, turned into a malevolent, dark, ghostly figure, a screaming man, and an attack by the house itself, finally forcing them to leave. I'm positive I had him on the show. I should play that as a replay here on the Dark Matter Digital Network one of these weeks. Jefferson Barracks and Cemetery in St. Louis. Several hauntings throughout the cemetery and barracks have been reported. Perhaps the creepiest is that of a little girl wandering the headstones. Or maybe it's the 2 soldiers from the Civil War acknowledging each other at sundown. One a Buffalo soldier and the other a Confederate soldier. A couple more here. We've got the Lorimier Cemetery, Cape Girardeau. Lorimier is home of the tapping ghost. Visitors feel the sensation of being tapped on the shoulder, looking around and realizing it must be something that fell from the tree. Then they feel the tapping again. Female visitors have reported the sensation of having their hair pulled. I have a friend, told this story many times, but we used to train at an old, very old building here in Bothell. And everybody was sitting in a circle, warming up for jiu-jitsu class. And somebody felt a tap on the shoulder. They turned around and nobody was there. Several people in that class had reported really weird things in that building. And later I went, and you can look at the archives, actually did a ghost hunt in that building and did experience some weird things. Check out the archives for that. And finally, the Bellefontaine Cemetery. One story goes that a young girl hitches a ride somewhere between the Calvary Cemetery nearby and the gates of the Bellefontaine Cemetery. And before arriving at the gates, she is suddenly gone. Another story speaks of a little boy who runs into the street. You think you hit him, but there's nobody there. Well, that sounds like a place never to go to. I'll tell you that right now. And with that, everybody, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for listening. We are here every Sunday night, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern, here on the Dark Matter Digital Network. I want to thank everybody for listening. Don't forget to check out Dragon King Dark. We do a double feature every Sunday night, myself and Carl Stern, After Dark Radio and Dragon King Dark. I want to thank Keith Rowland, as always, the brains behind the Dark Matter Digital Network. We'll talk to you again next time, After Dark Radio, here on the Dark Matter Digital Network.